a weekend of debauchery and rockabilly music and motorcycles and, hot rod racers. So the first night we arrived.
Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
All right, well, welcome back to this episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast. My guest here today is Matt Jorgensen. Matt, you've got a long bio that I'm looking at, but I'm going to summarize it.
Yeah.
You're a musician. And you're an educator.
I do many things related to the music, yes.
Yeah. So you were born in Seattle, you moved to New York, you came back, you've got a record label. You're now teaching at Shoreline Community College, which is where you started at school as well. So we've just hit all the high points. So I'm going to shut up and just ask you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, yeah, thank you. My name's Matt Jorgensen. I play the drums and I write some music and I teach some music. So yeah, I grew up here and I started playing drums my freshman year of high school, and my my younger brother was taking guitar lessons. So I went down to the Kennelly Keys in Greenwood and I wanted to take drum lessons. And they said, well, here's a piece of paper for this guy who's teaching drums. His name's John Bishop. And so I would have been 14, I think, at the time. Fast forward, I'm about to turn 50. And John Bishop, we still talk on a daily basis because he's the founder of Origin Records, and he's the guy who I've, worked on the record label. I started at the record label like 2 weeks in. So, he's my partner in all the music business stuff that we've done. So I started playing drums in high school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went to Shoreline Community College and joined the jazz band there. I met my friend Tom Abbs, and after a year, Tom was like, I'm going to move to New York. You should too. And then I went. A year later, I went, and then I hung out there and went to the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music. And I hung around for 10 years after that in New York City, and Origin Records has started, and I played a bunch of gigs and did a lot of stuff, and met my wife. We got married, and then I knew I didn't want to stay in New York forever. So Origin Records was taking off and we had a lot of opportunities. So I moved back to Seattle in 2002 and I've been doing stuff ever since.
All right. So I got to ask you a couple of questions based on all of that. So 14, you started playing the drums. Had you played any other musical instruments before?
I think my mother made me take piano lessons when I was in elementary school, which I didn't want to do. In hindsight, it was really bad of me to quit. So
all right,
people, stay with it. It would have been a lot beneficial. And then I remember, and actually, I wanted to take drum lessons in like 5th grade in elementary school, and it was not a very good experience with like the school music teacher, and so that didn't really last.
Okay.
But then I had some phenomenal teachers when I got into college, and that just really reminds it. Just now that I'm on the other side, I'm a music teacher. I draw on that constantly, like how I felt not having somebody to kind of really help guide me, and then vice versa with the experiences that I have had when I've had excellent teachers.
Okay. The other important question I have out of that intro was, you met your wife in New York. Was it a hard sell to get her to move to Seattle?
Yeah, maybe I will say we moved. I mean, she had visited and we had been together for a long time, but we did move back to Ballard, and we lived in the early Origin Records. So John Bishop lived in the Junction building, which is right across the street from the Tractor Tavern in Old Town Ballard. It's great. It's nice. It's quaint. Cobblestone roads, historic building. And so we were like, John, he had an apartment on one side of the building, and then an apartment opened up on the other side of the building, and so he's like, well, you could rent that, and I did. And then meanwhile, a studio apartment opened up, and so we rented that as our office. So we were both in the building, and then we had a separate office in the building.
Okay.
And we drove across country, and we arrived in Seattle. And anyone who's been to Old Town Ballard or knows the Tractor Tavern knows about may know about the Rockabilly Ball, which is like, a weekend of debauchery and rockabilly music and motorcycles and, hot rod racers. So the first night we arrive, music's going till 2 a.m, and people are out on the street like, I distinctly remember looking out my window because I hear tires screeching, and there's like a Model T or old Ford zooped up and then head to head with like an old cafe racer motorcycle, both with the brake, squealing tires like in a chicken match or so, who will flinch first, and they're just screeching. And my wife was like, I didn't move back to Seattle for this. So that was the first night. And it got better since. Lo and behold, she's been back 20 years.
So was your wife from New York originally?
She grew up there.
Okay.
Yeah. And her dad, her parents were kind of hippies, and her dad was a modern artist, abstract painter.
Okay.
And so she grew up in New York. And left for college and kind of moved back. And I met her. We worked at Starbucks, both out of art school. She was a modern dancer. I was a jazz musician. We both needed jobs. So we both worked at Starbucks, and we were working at like the 5th Starbucks in Manhattan in the early 2000s. No, this would have been mid 90s. Like Starbucks had just moved into New York City.
Was it the Park Place? Was it Park Place? What was the huge one there?
The first one was on the Upper West Side, like 81st and Broadway, and then there was Astor Place.
Yeah, Astor Place.
And we were on the Upper East Side, and then she moved to the one in the East Village, and I moved to the one down in City Hall after that. So,
what did you do? What did you guys do for Starbucks? Were you baristas? Were you store managers? What did you?
No, just baristas. We were there for the health insurance and minimum wage.
Did you ever have
while
to
we did our art and all the other stuff?
Did you ever have to call the help desk
at Starbucks?
Yeah.
No.
Because you might have talked to me at that period of time.
Oh, wow.
I was one of the support help desk people. So if your cash registers were, not working, or it was supposed to be for technical support, but literally one time the Pioneer Square store called and said, "Hey, our toilets are overflowing. What should we do?"
Yeah.
I don't think
You're
they liked my
frantically flipping through the book of.
Yeah, I don't think they liked my answer, but anyway, we'll.
Yeah, well, that was before. Basically, it's so I have so much respect for people who work at Starbucks now, because we basically had to make a latte or a cappuccino or drip coffee. That was it.
That was it.
We didn't even write it on there were so few drinks, you didn't even have to write it on the cup.
No, it was that company has anyway. That's it would have been really funny if you said, "Yeah, I called the help desk." I'd be like, "Well, we might have talked then." But it's the Astor Place one called, because that was I don't want to say it was their flagship probably in New York. Starbucks was extremely concerned that store looked perfect and ran perfectly at all times, right? And so they would call us with every little question.
That was such a great time. Looking back on it, there was so much stuff happening. Even for me, I was, when I went to music school in the early 90s, New York was, there are parts of New York that are still inexpensive. You can still find deals, you can still go out to eat inexpensive. Okay. You can find, little places on the street, but when I went there, everyone lived in Manhattan pretty much, and because it was affordable, and the East Village had so many little clubs to play. We played every night of the week, basically. There were little gigs around, and I remember Astor Place. They had music there. They had jazz music at Astor Place at the Starbucks, and then across the street was Barnes and Noble. Thriving store. Tower Records was just down the street. You had to go out and buy music, and. Right. You had to be a participant in getting the art that you wanted,
So you convince your wife to move back to Seattle. The first night you've got screeching tires.
Yeah.
You probably are going, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea or not. But what a great location. I mean, the Tractor Tavern is one of my favorite places in Seattle. I loved going to see music at the Tractor Tavern. But here's my interpretation. Jazz is big in New York. Jazz doesn't seem to be big in Seattle. Now, I could be completely wrong, but that's just my interpretation. And I want you to help debunk that if you can. But so you move back, you move from a vibrant jazz scene to a community that, at least in my interpretation, jazz isn't that big in Seattle. So what have you seen improve musically in the Seattle area in the last 20 years?
I mean, I think what has improved is the level of musicianship here and the creativity and the musicians who are here. I mean, I think if you've casually paid attention to the news and stuff like that, there's a huge thriving youth jazz programs here. All the high schools are, you have Roosevelt, Garfield, Mountain Lake Terrace, Mount Si, Edmonds Woodway. A ton of these schools who compete nationally is some of the best programs. We send a lot of musicians to a lot of the jazz conservatories, whether it be Berkeley, New England Conservatory, New School, Manhattan School. A lot of people, a lot of the younger musicians here are great. What I think is lacking now is just venues and places to play, which is a result of, prices going up, Amazon and just commercial real estate being ridiculously expensive.
In Seattle? No.
Yeah. I mean, moving back, if I have these talks occasionally and you reminisce and you're like, oh, right, that's kind of pre-Amazon or there was a ton of places to play when I was coming up, just a ton of clubs around Seattle and Belltown and down in Pioneer Square. It was hopping. And it kind of cycles and it goes in phases.
Do you see it with the combination of commercial rent being exorbitant and COVID making it so you couldn't be in a room with more than two people? Are you seeing, what's the jazz community like now in 2022? Is it improving slowly? Are you starting to see that? It goes in waves. Okay.
I really think, we talk about this, me and John Bishop, we started the Ballard Jazz Festival in 2003, and that was going every year up until COVID. And a bunch of people, do stuff. Tom Marriott's doing stuff now with Seattle Jazz Fellowship. It really takes a few people to kind of make a scene happen. You don't want to have one venue, have a couple venues that are going and that can really improve things. But I think, artist types were always creative in that, rent's insane now. So maybe we find a way to produce music at unconventional venues. In a way, when we started the Ballard Jazz Festival, the highlight of that is the Ballard Jazz Walk, where we have multiple venues all on a joint ticket price. So you can go to, we've had 12 venues. You buy a single ticket, you can go see 20 bands over the course of the night in 12 different venues. Some of those venues have been furniture stores or a yoga studio who they clear out and we rent some chairs and we put them up, and it's great. So yeah, we don't have the level of local jazz clubs the way we have before, but I think artists will always find a way to make art. And if that involves asking your friend who's got an art gallery if we can do concerts there, then we'll do it, and people will show up and we'll have a good time.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a hard question, or actually not hard. I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you guys going to try to relaunch the Ballard Jazz Festival?
Yes, we were strongly considering it. We were just having talks kind of with our, informally, we were all out at a music event last night and ran into a couple people, and we were like, yeah, we need to sit down and scope it out. We thought about for 2022. Here's the scary thing and the uncertain. It's the uncertainty, and I think we even thought about doing it in, was it 2021? I think, and it was right when Omicron hit, and we were
Right.
like, okay, we're going to do it. And we started putting things into play, and then Omicron came, and within a week, everything kind of re-shut down. And
Right.
it's like, well, we're not an institution. We don't have like, infinite funds. It's really kind of us betting on the fact that there'll be money in the bank to pay for it. So I think for us, the scary thing for me was the fact that, stuff can literally close in a week. And
Right.
so if we plan and then we get the festivals 3 months away and then 2 months and 2 weeks away, another thing hits, then we go. But I think, now I think we're, knock on wood, that we're looking at it this next year just because, we've learned. I mean, I think there's a lot of, just over the past couple of years, there's a lot of, it's been tough. And I think there's a lot of mourning for a lot of the stuff that's happened. But in a way, there's been a lot of invention, a lot of new, rebirth that's kind of come out of this. So I think you can look at it both ways. So I think for us, it's that was kind of a learning thing to say, well, things can shut down pretty quickly. But I think now as society, we've we're moving on, and we're going to do it no matter what.
Well, it'd be great because I think, I think we need more people putting together events that the public can get out and go see, whether it be a jazz festival or an art walk or, tires, who's going to blink first if they're power braking.
Maybe not that one.
Well, I don't know. Maybe now we'd welcome. I don't know, but I think it's good that people are trying this. And you're right, though. It is incredibly. It does seem like things can. I don't know. How do I say this? Maybe overreact. And everyone needs to be safe. I'm not trying to say that, but
yeah. The thing I will say is that in the 30 some years that I've been doing this, the thing that I've learned and the things that we've been forced to do, I mean, even take away COVID, even the Ballard Jazz Festival, we've been forced to kind of reinvent that festival 3 or 4 times already because the neighborhood has changed. Venues have gone away, or, what used to be a music venue is no longer a music venue. It's something else.
Right.
We started at, a museum, we at one point we were doing concerts at the old Nordic Heritage Museum, and they closed and they moved. And then it's like, well, this year they were in transition for a year as they moved into a new venue. So now we have no host venue. So now we need to find something else, and where are we going to go? So I think, we've encountered, having to reinvent multiple times, and this is going to be another one of those situations, which, I think if I was a genius, I'd figure out a way to write a business guru book about reinvention, but I'm not. But it's just what you have to do.
Well, kudos to you guys though for not festivals are a lot of work in the best of times, much less in current, whatever words are hard for me this morning. I think I need more coffee. My gosh. But kudos for you for not giving up. I think that's, it's a testament to your stick-to-itiveness. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you came back to Seattle. What did you start doing? So were you just playing professionally at that time, or what? And what was your wife doing? I mean, so let's go back.
My
20
wife
years
went
now.
to. She's a modern dancer. She did the grad program at the University of Washington for dance.
Okay.
And then I was just Origin Records had been going for 4 or 5 years at that point, and we were getting some traction, and it was requiring daily kind of interventions on stuff to do. Okay. And John and I, we both just, I always say we want to make our art and we want to make music, and so it's like kind of whatever it takes to make that happen. No one was giving us a record deal, so we'll make our own record label, and we're broke, so John had figured out how to do all the graphic design stuff, and I had been fooling around building websites for artists. This is like early web design stuff.
Right.
So I did the website and he did the covers, and we built an online store and we started shipping records all over the world, and we got distribution, and then, you know, concerts, venues would pop up and we'd put on shows, and we were just doing anything it took to put out records and play shows and do gigs. We'd tour, and I was releasing my own records and playing on other people's records and just doing the thing you do when you're a artist in your late 20s, I guess.
Right, but you key into that whole description there was broke.
Yeah.
How does one launch? How do you bootstrap a record label?
I mean, we were, I guess, you know, you'd consider it an artist cooperative, and that's really what it was, is that we were licensing albums from the artist. And so a majority of the revenue went back to the artists, which was great. And so we just, it was just doing, coming together as a collective. And I think that's a good, model for anything, really. I mean, it was all of us in it together, and it was almost like a band of misfits and rejects, because again, it was like, we're, you know, like, and this is our 25th anniversary. There's just a article on John and Origin Records that just came out in Downbeat magazine, and it, you know, he's kind of waxing poetic about the old times, and it really was. You know, the label started because John had 4 records that he all played drums on, and he did the album for. And then around the same time, I was like, well, I have this album I'm working on too, and I can do the website, and can we put that out? And then more people came and they said, well, I have this record, can I do it too? Put it out. And it just went from there. And you know, we were active on the scene. We were doing gigs. A lot of people knew us. And then as word got out, people, you know, there was a couple artists who were kind of a big deal, and a couple of them, you know, they lost their record label or they got dropped from their label, and they're like, well, I'd like to keep putting this out. They'll come over to us and put out a record or 2 records and then get signed by somebody else. So I think I tell my music students, you know, a career in the music business is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think looking back on 30 years, it's just John and I's, you know, a lot of it was our reputation, and people trusted us, and the fact that we were musicians too, the fact that we just showed up and cared, that gets you a long ways, you know, integrity, and just that other stuff.
Let me ask you though. So I'm old compared to you. I'm old, and when I hear Origin Records, I think vinyl LPs. That's what, you know, the word record is an album to me, right? I now 25 years ago, vinyl wasn't, I mean, it was, we all wanted CDs at that point. So were you guys putting things out on vinyl? Were you putting it out on CD?
Well, it coincided, like, kind of the birth of Origin in 1997 kind of coincided with the price drop in manufacturing CDs. So you're able to manufacture CDs relatively inexpensive.
Right.
And if you could record the CDs, you know, relatively inexpensive, then you have a pretty good, you know, and then if you could sell the CDs, you have a pretty good profit margin built in.
Right.
And the price of manufacturing CDs just continue to drop.
Don't they pay you now? Aren't they paying? I'm kidding. You know, somebody's paying you per CD.
I think it's about $1 a CD to manufacture. So if you sell that thing for $15, $20,
nice
that's
margin.
a pretty good profit margin.
Yeah.
So that's how we just kind of, John would do the covers, and we'd get the CDs manufactured, and we had kind of some distribution channels set up, and artists would go out on tour. And so that was the thing. This was this was really pre-online, pre-Amazon even selling CDs, way pre-digital. So I think, you know, the whole digital music thing kind of changed it, you know, for the worse. For artists, for the better, for consumers.
If I was a musician, and be thankful that I'm not, because, but if I was a musician and I wanted to work with you guys, you would, let me make sure I'm understanding you. You would license my album, to the option to publish my album.
Yeah.
Right. And so was that like we'd sit down and agree you would have, 1,000 copies made?
Yeah. So we kind of act as the middle person in between. And which actually works out great. I mean, I think in a way, it's the ownership of the sound recording that's really the thing of value. And if the artists are able to maintain that ownership, which they do in a licensing deal more often than not, then that's where, their value is, if they can find ways to sell the music and do all that other stuff. So it's the music industry has a fine history of exploiting artists. And you hear horror stories, and a lot of those horror stories just come from the fact that, if you're working for a big record label, they're giving you it in advance against your royalty rate of $1 per album sold or something like that. So if you spend $100,000 recording it, you need to sell 100,000 copies before you even make any money. But again, we know that an album costs $1 to make. So if the record label, they've sold 100,000 copies at $6 because they sell it to the distributor. So the record label's made $600,000, and the artist has broken even.
Yeah. So, so in this case, then you're helping the artist whose strength is being a musician, not necessarily a business person.
Yeah. Okay. And I think it comes out, I mean, for us, it was a model of how can we stay in business, because that's the other thing is that, the music, I mean, kind of like the book industry I was seeing they said, 95% of books published don't sell more than 5,000 copies. And it's the Daniel Steeles and the Tom Clancy's and the Stephen King's who sell a massive amount of books.
95% 95% of all
that
books
pay for everyone else's memoirs being published and stuff like that. So, for us, again, it was just, we were just trying to figure out a model that worked. And I will, for the recording industry in the late 90s, is that we were the outliers in that, we were doing things a little bit differently. Well, jump ahead 10 years, 20 years. Now everyone's kind of doing it the way we do, because we did it, because that's just, that's the way it kind of works now, is that if you're an up and coming artist, you're not going to get signed to a record label until you've proven that you can be hugely successful. There's very little risk taking on the side of record labels now, because there's so much at risk.
Right. Yeah. So are you now today, you guys are still releasing albums, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So are you still doing CDs, or have you transitioned, quote unquote, back to vinyl, or what's the product look like?
We do all the above. Some albums, some releases will come out on vinyl. Everything comes out on CD. Okay. Everything comes out on digital. So it's kind of a combination of all of the above.
Okay. Is it still fun after 25 years?
Yeah.
Folks,
I've just
you can't see his face. I got to interrupt him. You can't, because this is an audio only. He had this look on his face. Like, you could tell it's still fun, but I think he was thinking about an event or two that might not have been fun recently.
I bring this up because I was, I've been in the studio recording music over the past few weeks. Now, I will say I've been in recording not jazz albums or music albums. I've been recording stuff for like TV writing stuff that I do. But the takeaway was, like, it feels really fun to, after the past few years, to be in the recording studio with fellow musicians making music and not being like completely freaked out. Everyone's vaccinated, everyone's right. Most of us have gotten COVID. It's, and recovered from it. So, I was thinking about this and talking to my wife, it's like, oh, right. This, it's, running a business is not fun. Like,
I was going to, the state of Washington, just easy to work with, the state's so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's like occasionally we get, you're dealing with the logistics of shipping boxes of CDs and they go to the wrong address, or we've had the fun where you open up the CD and you're like, that's not the album. Like, like the machine, the sorter gets off, and so all of a sudden we have 1,000 CDs with the wrong CD inserted, so you got to ship them all back and they got to redo. So that stuff's not fun. But no. The art part, the being in the studio with other people making music, that's fun. Right. You forget sometimes. But
so does Origin help with recording? Do you guys provide, that, or is it? Does the artist bring you the fully mixed, ready to go album?
It's all of the above. I mean, because like right now we're an international label, so we have artists all over the world. So some of them, artists in Europe are doing their projects independently and they send us when they're done. Mm-hmm. But we have local artists too who we, help, or, sometimes John and I still play on drum, we both play drums. So, right. One of us will be on the album and we'll help coordinate, or just, it's just all of the above. And again, the thing is, like, after 25 years, we have this huge extended family of people who can help. And I think, right. For the youngsters out there, if you're listening, there's this whole thing of like, I'm going to do it all myself. Like, I can do it everything. I can record, you can record at home, and I can get these mics and I'm going to write it, record it. I'm going to play it. Like, why would you want to do that?
Well, welcome back, Matt. Thanks. So everyone, we had some technical difficulties here. I think it was, and Matt and I have continued on about the Mac Studio conversation. You'll have to just wait to see if I buy one. So Matt, we were talking about, in person and, studio, working on your computer stuff and all of this stuff. But one of the things you've mentioned multiple times so far in the episode is your students. So how did you move back to Seattle? You've got the record label. You're playing all the time. You're recording, you're releasing albums, you're doing all this. You're a musician.
Yeah.
But you've kind of pivoted to being an educator as well. Why? Why?
So for me, what this about the timeline, like the late around 2010, that era, I'd been in the studio a lot, played on a lot of soundtracks and other, I do commercial jingles. And then I started producing a lot of, commercial jingles, and I had written some music. And
I'm going to interrupt you. I can't not ask. Commercial jingles. Give me an example. What would we have heard of?
I played on such hits as the Unlimited Pasta Bowl at the Olive Garden, and Robert Half, temp agency stuff, or an Oreo commercial, just like random.
How does one get gigs to play on the Unlimited Pasta Bowl at Olive Garden? I mean, where does one go for that type of work?
Yeah, you just get a call. Well, I'll tell you that one. Well, that was the deciding one, because I had played on a lot of these and I'd produced a lot of them. So, for example, the Unlimited Bowl at the Olive Garden, I just dropped my kid off at daycare, and it's 8:30 in the morning. We're going full circle. I'm in line at a Starbucks waiting to order a coffee, and I get a phone call from a music house in New York City who had been recommended to me from a friend. And they said, I'd been recommended to them, and they said, we need to get a group in the studio. Can you get a group in the studio today? We need to record 2 30-second pieces of music, and we need them back by 5 o'clock their time in New York, which would be 2 o'clock Seattle time. And, it's 8:30 in the morning. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so, I hang up with them. I call around, I call a bunch of people. I call studios. And at that point I finally got the 7th recording studio I call. I'm basically calling like, are you available for me to record? And they're like, yeah, when do you want to book time? Like, right now. I want to book time like right now. I'll come in. And so, yeah, we got the commercial done and we did that. But, and this is the way, and to go through, like, this is the way this stuff works. It's like, it's it's frantic in that people were still writing out the music and writing out the charts as I was assembling the group, and we all show up to the studio and we're like, okay, we're waiting for the email to come in with the charts. We print out the charts, we start recording, we send the files back. But it's a lot of this, you know, I'm there producing and I'm kind of organizing. I've hired all the people and I'm having to interpret, you know, what people meant on their charts from New York and how the thing's going to work. And meanwhile, there's going to be more musicians recording over the top of what we did later that day in New York City. And, you know, and just the way the business works is the intellectual property, the writing part gets more of a financial reward than the musician part. So it's kind of, you know, doing a couple of these and seeing like, oh, right, like I'm doing a lot of this work and I could easily have written that too. So maybe I should learn how to do more of that writing part and getting more of these jobs because, you know, I'm doing a bulk of the work anyway. And so then I kind of pivoted and started writing, thinking about writing some more music. And then I ended up eventually, it was like 2017, 16, I went and got a master's in, you know, writing music for TV and film. So I kind of went back and did a full year master's program, just strictly on that, on my writing. And literally right as I graduated, a friend of mine, Jim Sisko, he teaches at Bellevue College, called 2 weeks before the year was going to start to say, hey, our music technology teacher just quit. Do you want to teach these classes? So I did that part-time at Bellevue College. And then right as during the pandemic, a spot opened up at Shoreline Community College and I applied and ended up getting the job there. So I just kind of came about.
I have to ask. So you get a master's in how to write music for commercial and film and television. How does that differ from writing music for your own album? How's it different?
It's different in that you're there to be a collaborator to the story, right? So you're not what's different is when I write music for albums, it's just kind of like this is my vision. This is entirely my vision. Like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm going to want to do. Whereas if you're, when I'm working on, a project, like the vision is the collective goal of whatever this TV episode is, or this movie is, or this commercial, or this, you know, YouTube video, whatever it is. And so you're there to kind of serve it and kind of come up with ideas. What struck me is that it's very much like being a jazz musician and just improvising. Like I'll sit down and I'll have this, you know, I'll have a blank, you know, video. It's funny to watch, especially like cartoons or episodes or movies where there's no music and it's really not good.
Well,
and then you realize like how much the music really supports it, right? So then you if you approach it from the aspect of like, I'm here to make this better, I'm here to support it and move the story along, sometimes foreshadow, sometimes not, but it's really fun to have that, you know, not power, but just to be able to kind of contribute, you know, and just write something to do that. And I got started. My friend Tim Tyler, who, again, if you want a life in the arts, it's all about friendships and collaborations. Tim Tyler was a friend of a friend. Early on in Origin Records, he came and made some commercials for us and filmed some concerts. And he calls me one day and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this YouTube series about, like, I'm really into motorcycles, so we're going to do this YouTube series about motorcycle stuff." Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is, but I want an all drum soundtrack, so I want you to do the music. And I was like, okay. And we did it, and it got like tens or hundreds of views. It was like
tens or hundreds.
You know, it evolved. And I think we just did episode 100, but like 12 episodes in, I was doing a gig in Toronto, and he calls me and he says, "I don't know what just happened, but like this thing's taken off. Like we did this thing, and like up until that we've gotten like each video got viewed like 500 times. He's like, I don't know what happened, but like all of a sudden this thing's got like 10,000 views in a day. And then I went and looked at it after the gig, and it had been up to 20,000 or something like that. And it just kept going and took off. And so, you know, it's like fast forward, it's like approaching combined, you know, all of them, it's like 30 million views. So like I think about like my little rinky dink jazz records, like, you know, that I've, you know, moved a few thousand units, and then, you know, but, you know, I write music for this other thing that's been viewed 30 million times. So that I think that part of it's just kind of fun, you know,
All right.
for me.
I have to ask, because this is me making fun kind of you, but don't take it real personal. But what was the inspiration for the unlimited pasta at Olive Garden? How does one get inspired to write? You know, how does that work?
They wanted like and that's, you know, like coming back full circle. They wanted like a kind of like a Frank Sinatra jazzy crooner song.
Okay.
Right. They wanted, you know, Olive Garden Italian, maybe Dean Martin-esque kind of It's Amore, you know, that thing. But they wanted, they wanted a jazzy kind of Frank Sinatra Live at the Sands kind of vibe.
So they give you kind of that parameter.
Yeah.
That's the framework that they want you to work within. Then you come back with your interpretation of that.
Yeah. And that, and full disclosure, I didn't write those ones. I was just hired to go in and record it. So somebody else had written all the charts, and we kind of came in and play it. But, so, you know, on the charts, it says a la Count Basie Live at the Sands. And me as a professional musician needs to know, you know, has to have gone and listened to a ton of records over my lifetime and know, oh yeah, I know exactly what they mean, because I've listened to that record and I know exactly the drum pattern and the bass pattern for all that stuff.
So you were given 5 hours to put that together?
2
hours. 2 hours to put that together. Plenty of time.
Yeah.
What's the process? So you bring the musicians together, you guys get the chart, you look at it. It's not like you're rehearsing a whole lot. You're literally sitting down, playing the parts while somebody's running quote unquote tape, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you kick it back to New York. There's no time for them really to give you any feedback, is there? I mean, it's either good or.
Yeah, that was you know, this is a 30-second piece of music, so it's pretty quick, but that was pre-Zoom, right? There was no zooming into the session. Nowadays you can monitor via Zoom and listen to it in real time. But yeah, we'd record something and then, you know, quickly bounce out an MP3 clip and email it to the producers, and they'd listen to it, maybe make some changes and send it back. But yeah, no, that's the way it is. And like, if you're looking for a line of demarcation between like amateur musician and professional musician, like this is the job. The job is to show up and say, I need you to do this right now. Play this part. Maybe, you know, we're going to do 2 takes, maybe 3, and then we have to move on because we have, you know, for that particular, you know, we were recording 2 separate pieces of music that the client was going to choose. And that's the job. You just need to show up and play. And so, you know, for me too, as a producer, you know, I'm going through a list of like, I'm calling it, I need a bass player. First one can't do it. Okay, I'll move to the second one. They can't, they're already committed to something else. Okay, go to the third one, and find all these people to build out a session and make it work. The client, you know, they don't care if somebody can't, you know, they expect, we're paying for this. We expect it to be done. And then, you know, all the people down below make it happen.
So in this example that we're referencing, you literally got 2 hours to put this, you know, together. That's crazy. What's it normally like? When do you, like, how much time do you normally get in this arena?
It depends. It's just project to project. So,
but
you know, a lot of times I'll get a day to write, you know, if I'm working on a commercial or a show, you may have a week, you may have a day. I do this show, KCTS Presents, where it was 18 episodes, I think, that we had a couple months to do. So,
okay. So they're short.
They're like 5 or 6, there's 5 or 6 minutes per episode. And so I do, usually you get two, you'd have to do 2 per week to keep,
but you're
to
able
stay
to
on
get
track.
your number one bass player. If you, in other words, you're not like when you started this one, you said it was the 7th studio that could finally get you in. When you have a little bit more time, you can go to the studio that's maybe the better fit to work at for this type of project. You can get the players together that you want, correct?
Yeah,
So,
and you can sometimes too. I'll combine if I'm working on multiple projects all at once, which is common, and
Right.
I say, okay, well, an example would be last week I had to record some bossa nova music. I had to record some Christmas music because a lot of Christmas all the Christmas shows get done in July.
Yeah.
So yeah, I called somebody in for a session. I was like, all right, so now we're going to play some bossa nova music. That's great. Okay. Now I just need a saxophone solo over the middle part of Jingle Bells. Okay. Ready and go. And then, you finish that and you move on. And it's just, a lot of it is, the unglamorous part of just organization and, knowing what you need at the end and figuring out how you need that to get there.
Okay.
And sometimes, you write a piece of music and you listen to it and you're like, man, that's just kind of boring. But then when you match it up to a picture, I did one. I played drums on a cue one time for a pharmaceutical product, a drug, and they have to go through commercials where they say side effects may include, and they run through all the side effects, and they just have this little music going on behind that. And so, you're looking at this playing, you're like, man, this is really boring, but you have to realize that it needs to be boring because they're getting out all these side effects that you may encounter.
So now that you're instructing students in wanting to get into the music business. So when you started playing drums, did you ever think that you would be playing on a pharmaceutical product?
Absolutely not.
No. So
absolutely
you wanted to play Carnegie Hall or Madison Square Garden or the Ranch. You're too young to know the Ranch Tavern in Ellensburg, but the Tractor Tavern in Ballard. Those are the places you were aspiring to play, and now, but you're making a living by providing sound reinforcement in commercial products. In some, that's part of what you do.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, man. I mean, it's kind of cool.
I always tell I tell anyone who cares to listen that, it's the music business. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you're going to take some detours and all that. And even too, this is a relationship based industry, which I think most are. And that, a lot of times that's bad. Like, why is it who you know? Well, part of the reason is who you know, because, for example, the Olive Garden recording session, right? I have 2 to 4 hours to get this done. And it's not just what I have to get done. I mean, this is $50,000, $100,000 budgeted project when you consider the commercial shoot, the video, like all the posts, I'm like one little cog in this giant project. So I need to know that the people I'm going to hire are going to show up on time and are going to play the part right. So that is why, it's your professional reputation. It's how good you are at your instrument. And I tell, again, anyone who wants to listen, it's like, getting work. It's not about, your social media profile or all, the fancy stuff you do. It's about showing up on time and sounding good and being competent at what you do. And I think if you have those couple things, you could be a great musician, but if you don't show up on time, you're not going to work. Like if you show up on time and are moderately good, you're going to be more successful than a phenomenal musician who rarely shows up on time. Because again, the session last week, I was in the studio all day and I had, people coming in and out on 2-hour increments because of the way I needed to get everything done. So again, just realizing that, our small part is part of a huge, big budget. So yeah, that's I think, for going out and touring, when I was young, I went out and toured and slept on floors and, dingy hotel rooms and all that stuff. And that was great. But, who am I kidding?
You don't want to do that anymore.
I do like nicer hotel rooms and priority or what is economy comfort. I much rather fly economy comfort than regular economy these days as I get into my late middle ages.
Oh gosh. So at Shoreline, what classes, what are you doing? What are you instructing? What classes are you teaching, and what does Shoreline offer to people?
Yeah. So I think Shoreline Community College is incredibly unique in that we have a instrumental music program. So if you want to go get a music degree, or even if you just want to play music, maybe you want to sing in the choir, play in the concert band, play in the jazz band, we have programs for that. And then we were one of the first, if not the first in the state, going back to the 80s, to offer a degree in the recording technology, right? Music technology, the art of recording. So when I was a student there on the instrumental music side, there was the recording students who literally all they had to learn was set up mics, record into the recording console, record onto tape, you mix, good to go. Right. Now, obviously, it's much more complicated. You need to know all the software, all the hardware. Some students still do the recording console. Others are completely on the computer. So that's the side that I teach now, is that I teach in the music technology department. I teach. So we have two main degrees, which is the audio engineering program, where you learn how to record at a traditional recording studio. And then there's electronic music production, which is learning how to record on the computer and make music primarily based on the computer, which I think most of us do at home now. It's what I do at home. And, making stuff for PBS, like on a rig at my house, it's a few $1,000s. So, knowing how to use those tools and be creative. So I teach intro to music technology, first year audio recording, intro to game audio,
that's
advanced
a whole nother
game
genre.
audio sounds, sampling, synthesizers, all this stuff.
So my stepson went there and he was in the program. And I remember they had to put the music onto the movie Inception.
Oh yeah. I watched that actually. Yeah. I ended up seeing the end result.
That was really a phenomenal idea. I mean, it was interesting to see him. He really enjoyed that process. I think he ended up getting a computer science, went and got a computer science degree. And he's working in that arena. But his dad's a recording artist, so he was kind of following in.
I think I finished my first year there, so I'm getting ready to start my second year teaching there. But yeah, if you think about, and this is what I talk to students on day one, is like, think about how you interact with audio on a daily basis, right? Everyone listens to Spotify, but maybe you listen to the radio, you watch TV, there's music on the shows, there's music on commercials, there's music in video games, there's sound in video games, the alarm on, I'm holding up an iPhone for anyone, you're listening to it, but the sound, I have a video, the original sound designer at Apple, like if you have an iPhone and you take a photo and you hear that shutter sound,
right?
That's the sound of the guy, the original sound designer at Apple's. That's his Pentax camera that was recorded still to this day. Yeah. So it's like the sound, it's 30 years old or whatever.
That's
but amazing. Just, you think about that, because imagine if you had your phone and you push the button and there's no sound, like
there's no feedback.
Yeah. There's people thinking they're like, did that work? Did that do it? And so, the fun thing is just, I think most people, you hear the final result. You don't hear all the iterations that go into making something, and the trial and error that kind of goes back and forth, and just the artistic process. So that's the fun thing too, and also just telling, telling my students and telling younger creatives who, it's like, embrace feedback, because you're not going to nail it on your first try.
Right.
That, people are not going to like it, or they're going to make changes, and don't take that as a criticism of you and everything that you've done to get to this point. It's commerce. It's, they want to buy a product, and, it's like if you go buy jeans and you're like, these are not my size. I like these jeans, but I just need them in my size. Right. That's usually what the job is to be an audio creative, is that you get close, and then you give it to the client, and then they make some changes, and then you make a great product that comes out of that.
All right. Well, to respect your time, we'll begin to wrap this up. So one of the questions I love to ask musicians, and I'd like you, for the sake of this conversation, because it's Washington State related, as a performer, where's your favorite place to play music in Washington State?
Oh man, that's a hard one.
Well, I'll let you cheat. You can give me a couple, but where's
well, I will say this, that there are music is music should be an ecosystem, and we need all those places. Yes. So I've been lucky enough to play, at the Paramount or at Benaroya Hall, like do these really nice places, which are nice. But then, it's really fun to play just a dive bar, because you go in, you're just like, man, like,
give me an example of a dive bar that's a great venue as an artist, though. I mean, like, do you like, have you ever played the Tractor? Let's just use the Tractor. So the Tractor's got that low stage that is, the audience can be like right there next to you. Do you like playing at the Tractor? Is that a venue to play that you like?
Yeah.
For you personally.
I played the Tractor, Connor Byrne across the street, right? Connor Byrne's a great spot. Because especially like if the crowd's into it and you kind of do that. But like, Daryl's Tavern, or, there's just so many great places. Or, like you show up and you're like, I remember showing up in, this is not in Washington State, but showing up a place in Portland, and you're just like, you get on stage, you're like, oh man, like for a jazz venue, it's like, it sounds just like the Village Vanguard in here, or it's, it's like, It's got that closeness. And a lot of times, sometimes it's the, the staff and the people who are involved, or the audience. You're just like, it's just fun. So I just like, and I mean, to go full circle too, we started a jazz festival, the Ballard Jazz Festival. And part of that was kind of like, well, we don't know anything about running a jazz festival, but we've played a lot of them, and we know what we like as a performer, and we know what we dislike. So let's just take all the things we like and do that and be better. So, Jazz Alley is super fun place to play, but also, the old New Orleans Creole restaurant down in Pioneer Square. Yeah. That was always a blast, because that was a blast because Gay Anderson, who owned it, she was just like, she just loved musicians and loved everyone there, and would take care of you and give you dinner. Get mad. She'd get mad if you didn't eat some food while you were there.
That's awesome. All right. Yeah. So the one place you have, okay. So when I started asking this question, musicians, I expected. It also depends on the genre, right? Like you probably don't want to play El Corazon. I mean, I don't even like to walk on the floor in there, much less play there. So it's the genre of music and all that. But one venue, and you haven't named that venue yet, has been surprisingly the 800-pound gorilla in people reference. So I'm going to give you one more venue, Seattle-based venue, to see if you'll get it, just to see. And I'll even forget. I'm going to tell you the Triple Door.
Oh yeah,
musicians seem to love the Triple Door to play at as a venue to perform at. So my flip side to the question is, now you're in the audience. Where's a great place to go see and hear music in the area?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the Royal Room last night. That was fun. I mean, I think for me, that question now is like, because my joke is I'll see somebody and I'll be like, man, it's been a whole pandemic since I've seen you last. Run into people. So it's mainly going to where people are. I mean, for me, Tula's was the place that everyone kind of hung out, and that's closed now. But I mean, if I look at my calendar where I am going, it's, the Royal Room is where I go. Frequently. Vermilion, the Seattle Jazz Fellowship's Wednesdays up on Capitol Hill, and Jazz Alley, going there. Yeah, and the Triple Door, I'll be there. The Triple Door, for me, I mean, I think the flip side, the Triple Door is an awesome venue, and I've played there a bunch of times. But like it's like. And I think, the ecosystem is that there's all those different places, right? Whereas the Triple Door, just the nature of the stage and the lighting, a lot of time I can't see past the first row. So I don't even know. It's like sometimes it's talking into the void. You don't know if the people there are actually hearing it or what, versus, the small, intimate jazz club situation where you can see to the back of the room and kind of get that instant feedback. But all of them are great, and they all have different. Well, roles.
It's not that Daryl's is if you pick the Triple Door, that means Daryl's is bad. No, they all exist. It's just, I love to hear where musicians are treated well and they enjoy playing in the audience. You're the first person to acknowledge that the lighting at the Triple Door makes it harder for you to see the audience. So that's an interesting piece. All right. Is there a venue in the area that you haven't played that you want to play?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I've been on the stage at the Moore. I don't know if I've played for an audience at the Moore. Okay. Yeah, that's I mean, I think I'm a bit, it's weird in jazz because like right now our venues, are slowly coming back, and they haven't, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Okay. I mean, well, not in Washington. I mean, if the venue I have not played would be the Village Vanguard, which would be the all-time.
That would be
that is the crowning achievement of one's jazz career, in this thing. But I think, if anyone out there wants to open up a jazz club, give me a call.
There you go. You'll come and play on their stage.
Seattle right now, there's opportunity for it.
I think after having more and more of these conversations, because right now I'm on a run, it seems like with musicians in the jazz field, and you're all kind of saying the same thing, which is, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. I think too, and especially now too, because we've gone through 2.5 years, 3 years of what it feels like to be by yourself most of the time. And you're just like, oh, wow. Yeah. Sitting in a room, having that communal, whether it's a movie or live theater or, symphony, live music, it's much better when you're able to hang out with your friends.
All right. You drink coffee?
I do. I drink too much.
Well, that's true. We've already talked about. Well, and I say, do I ask you if you drink coffee? We've talked about Starbucks 2 or 3 times in the show, but that's not really. No, just kidding. So, where's a great coffee shop?
I go to Diva Espresso on 145th and Greenwood on my way to Shoreline Community College every morning, and I love the trivia question, which I usually get once a week. Right. I'm about 1 for 5, 2 for 5 on that during the week. Okay. But that's my go-to spot. And also, so that's my go-to spot for.
So what's the go-to drink? What are you ordering when you go there?
I went there yesterday and I got a double espresso, and other than that, I get large drip coffee. But for me, traveling over to Europe to play, they told me one time, like, there's German word for indigestible, or maybe it was in Italy, but they were like, no one, they'll have, in Germany, my friend was saying they'll have coffee with milk in the morning, but after that, no more milk in the coffee. So once you go past breakfast, it's espresso the rest of the day.
All right. Back in your days when you were a barista at Starbucks, let's go back there. Did you, what Starbucks coffee did you like?
I would have lattes.
All right.
I couldn't really get into cappuccino. I can't do lattes anymore because I don't want that much milk in the coffee. But I didn't do espressos. Espresso was fairly, that was like my mid to late 20s when I started touring a lot over in Europe. That would be when I would do. That's when I got an espresso. So mainly for me, it was just lattes,
a latte,
and drip coffee.
Right. Well, what in the Starbucks arena? What other drips did you like? Because like there was one that people loved, and I could not stand. Everyone, the Komodo Dragon one. Did you ever try that?
No,
that was horrible. I'm sorry, Starbucks. That Komodo Dragon. Ugh, never liked that one. I like their Italian roast personally. That's
good. I mean, I was there like the whole pre-Pike Place roast or whatever. But and that's back when if people like we still sold the beans, so somebody would order a pound of coffee and you'd go and scoop it out of the bin.
Yep.
We did that, but I remember my manager there. Like when we were opening the store, we went on a field trip and we went out to a bunch of different coffee shops. And we all got coffee, and you just had this analysis of like how was the service, how was the coffee, how did they prepare it, and which. I mean, I will say working at Starbucks was an incredible experience in terms of giving me an education on running a business and just conducting kind of entrepreneurship in a way. Because I remember I would get mad because not mad. I was annoyed because a woman would order like a double espresso and then just want all this milk foam on the top, which, technically you should probably have pay the extra 25 cents for that or something like that. But I remember my manager said to me one time, she comes in 7 days a week, sometimes twice a day. Like, I don't care about the extra 25 cents. She's there. And in a way, I parlay that into, the Ballard Jazz Festival. If anyone out there listening has come to the Ballard Jazz Festival, thank you, because we have people who come year after year after year, and it's like seeing family. And I feel incredibly fortunate that we really don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing because we know people are going to come back because they have a good experience. Because hopefully we've provided them with kind of that good experience.
Extra milk foam.
Yeah, just
the extra milk foam.
Yeah, it's like throw in that extra milk foam, and people will remember it, and they will come back. So to me, that was, and also too, just kind of reverse engineering. Like if you're starting a business, look at who else is doing that. What are they doing that's successful? Do that and try and put your own spin on it. And even I think about that, like just, writing music for TV and film stuff. Or to get back to the Olive Garden commercial, the client says that they want music like Dean Martin. Do that. Figure out how to reverse engineer that with your own stylistic sense to it, and you'll be successful. Okay. So,
all right. Three questions ago. First of them, when you're not doing music, when you're not teaching, what do you like to do for entertainment? What do you do for fun?
I have kids, so I pretty much drive them around. But I will say,
you're a chauffeur.
I will say, following the Mariners, we're all as a family, we are following the Mariners, and even my, New York City born dancer wife was better at spotting the talent that is Julio Rodriguez early in the season than even me. So, we're watching that. I also like bicycling. So,
all right.
Riding bikes.
Well, the Mariners are this. I can't say anything about the Mariners because my heart's been broken too many times. So I'm checking the standings every day and getting a little nervous, getting a little excited, a little nervous, a little excited.
Well,
Get back to me in a month. And we can talk.
Yeah, I showed my kids. We watched the 95, the hit, right? Edgar's hit that the Mariners beat the Yankees to go on to the ALCS in 1995. And I was explaining to my children, like, just context. I watched this live. Your mother and I had just started dating, and she did not own a television. So I went and bought like a little tiny 5-inch black and white TV that I watched the hit on that. So
I remember how the city of Seattle changed that summer.
Yeah.
It became a baseball town. It was so interesting. You'd be walking, because I was living in Seattle at that time and I was working at Starbucks, and be walking around and people were talking baseball. And before it was like, oh yeah, the Mariners, who cares? But the city was captivated. That was awesome. All right. So your wife found Julio Rodriguez's talent before you did.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. He's pretty amazing, isn't he? All right. What didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
Oh, I don't know.
And hopefully if we've done a good job, the answer is like, I think we've covered it all. So that's what I'm aiming for. But this is the chance. If we overlook something, what did we overlook?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say for those, if you see me out and about, I host a radio show. There's that other thing. So if anyone wants to tune in Saturdays at 4:00 West Coast time to 88.5 KNKX, they can hear me talk about new music on the New Music Review, which is a show I host on that. But other than that, come say hi to me. Come to the Ballard Jazz Festival and let's chat. I like talking to people.
I'll put links in there. Okay, so here's your last question. I'm stealing this one from a former guest.
Okay.
It's cake or pie, and why?
Okay, my absolute favorite is banana cream pie.
Okay.
But it is very rare that I come across that. So if they have banana cream pie, I will do banana cream pie. Other than that, I'm most likely going to have cake. I don't like apple pie. I don't like blueberry pie or raspberry. Like, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll have maybe key lime, definitely banana cream. Other than that, I'll do cake.
All right.
And a double espresso.
There we go. All right. Everything's better with a double espresso. Everything. Yeah. So, Matt, thanks for taking the time, and thanks for enduring the technical snafu. Appreciate that. I'm looking forward to you guys relaunching the Ballard Jazz Festival. That'll be awesome. And I'm gonna here's the other plug: is you got to help get jazz music over east of the Cascades. There needs to be venues over here in Eastern Washington for you guys to come and play at, because.
Yeah. I will say there's a circuit of wineries sometimes too that I've gone over and played at, and I did one before the pandemic, and I was supposed to do one in 2020, then ended up getting canceled. So I will be over at some point, because
perfect.
It's
all right.
It's great to travel east of the mountains.
Yeah, it's awesome. Where do you like to go over Eastern? Where in Eastern Washington do you like to go?
We've been to Yakima a bunch. We did a trip a couple of years ago. We went north, like we went through Leavenworth and then crossed over. I forget where we stayed, but we eventually made our way to Spokane, Idaho.
Okay.
Came back. I've ridden the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes from Spokane over to Coeur d'Alene, and then down kind of the bike tour through Oregon and Montana, which is great. Okay. And then, I played a bunch in Walla Walla and the Palouse and doing that circuit, which is, it's crazy that you can be in Seattle and drive 45 minutes, be in the mountains, and then drive another 45 minutes and be in the desert or high plains. Yeah. It's like
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.